Hello and welcome to the Life Fit podcast. I'm your host, Jack O'Halloran, and it is my pleasure to introduce to your ears the one and only Conor O'Keeffe. Conor, 1 seconds away from being a national Muay Thai champion, to climbing Kilimanjaro and being the first man since 2016 to complete a 200-mile road race in the UK under 60 hours. We chat about how Conor developed the fortitude to complete these tasks, going from his inner demons, and how he helped to iron those out. We move on then to how he is helping others to find that out in the sense of his new project, the TFS 32-32-32, where Conor is planning on doing 32 marathons in 32 days across the 32 counties of Ireland, starting with 32 pounds on his back, shedding a pound as he goes. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. You can find Conor on his social media. He's on Instagram, O'Keeffe, that's COKEEFFE. And if you like what we bring to you on the show here, you can find us at LifeFit Studios on Instagram. You can also find my personal page at JackO'Halloran_IE. And if you'd like to support us here, you can get us on Patreon. We are the Life Fit Podcast. So without further ado, here is Conor. Conor, how are you?
I'm not too bad, my man. Good to finally meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though we're miles apart and sitting in a room with Skype and all of that, so connected somehow. That's our social distancing, isn't it?
It's the modern age.
Modern age. Are you behaving yourself with all these social distancing rules?
Yeah, I've been finding it tough enough, but I have the old Madra here inside in the house, and he's keeping me company the whole time. He's keeping me out of trouble.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's a cat on my end, and she had 4 kittens last week, so the 5 of us are all locked up, and we're staying safe, you know.
Yeah, you've got your hands full there, so.
Yeah, right. They're only starting to see now, so the trouble will start now, I suppose. The trouble will start now. So tell us, I suppose, to start off, there's a wee bit of news from your end, and you've kind of been held back a bit, I suppose, with Corona, haven't you?
Yeah, so I suppose I've been touching the kind of the cusp of ultra running for the last couple of years, and had planned to do a big run, starting April 1st to do 32 marathons in 32 days in the 32 counties with 32 pounds on my back, and because of the virus and because of the outbreak, I have had to postpone until I'm thinking September or October. So, I don't think that any of us know how this thing is going to pan out over the summertime. So I said we might as well stretch it out for a long enough time, postpone it for a long enough time, and see how the summer goes.
Absolutely, and I suppose it's great that, look, at least you're still able to look forward and say, look, we'll fit it in at some stage. No, I suppose you're getting it there. You're obviously into ultra running and all these big events. But I suppose what kind of got you into all of that? Now, some people will maybe know your background story, but for those who don't and are hearing it for the first time, I mean, could you backtrack and maybe where did it all start off for
Yeah.
Conor O'Keeffe?
Well, a lot of people would think that I've been running my whole life, because of the distances that I'm doing, and because of, me wanting to do, this mammoth task of 32 marathons in a row. They think I'd be doing marathons my whole life, but I haven't. It hasn't even been 2 years. I haven't even had the 2-year anniversary of my first ever marathon. So I'm very, very much actually still new to the whole ultra running thing, but kind of, it's been a common thread throughout my life to go at things as hard as I possibly can, and to really try and see what my limitations are with these things. So, my first ever marathon was the Cork City Marathon in 2018, June 2018. And I had a fairly lackluster 6 months of training where I was kind of off and on, still kind of drinking quite a lot, and trying to get out onto the road when I could. Had this absolute foundationless belief in myself that I was going to do a 3-hour marathon, and was gonna rock it out and just bring it home in 3 hours. I completely and utterly fell apart after about 34 or 5 kilometers, which was the absolute death of me. I finished it in 3:38, which is still a fairly okay time for a first type marathon. But I was disappointed, but I was not disappointed so much in the outcome, but I was disappointed in how I had prepared for it. And when I finished it up, this huge achievement when you've got your first marathon under your belt. I had this great embrace with my dad at the finish line, and everything was seemed marvelous, and I had accomplished something great. And it kind of left me straight away afterwards. The next day was kind of completely gone. I was kind of searching again for this, for something that was going to push me, because I had a boxing background, as you might know. So I wanted something that was going to push me, and that was going to get me to that, I suppose, into that kind of mind frame where it was, it was a battle against myself. And the marathon didn't quite do that to me. Yeah, it was tough, and the last couple of kilometers were definitely painful. But I had come across a guy called David Goggins. You might know him as well, Jack, from Instagram. And I came across him, and I just absolutely was, enamored with the way that he was speaking. Not so much about what he had done, because he's a very accomplished man. He's got world records, and he's got multiple ultra marathon finishes and wins, and top five finishes under his belt. But all of these things kind of paled in comparison to the honesty that the man had. When I started listening to him, and the honesty about his failings in life, and all of these things that times where he didn't put the effort into his life, and he didn't he took the path of least resistance, he took the easy way out, and all of these things resonated with me so much that I just I suppose started to follow him along, and I got the idea fairly soon afterwards that I would like to run my first ultra marathon. And I was sitting down with a buddy of mine in the Elm Tree in Cork in a restaurant, and I said, Mark, check there if there's a 100-mile race on in Ireland. And he checked there. He's like, oh, there's one in 7 weeks. I said, yeah, we'll book it. We'll do it. 7 weeks later, man, we went up to Connemara. We were nearly laughed out of the place. Like, people were hearing that these guys are trying to do a 100-mile race with 7 weeks training, and they're going to, they're expecting to win this. Like, I remember coming to the first checkpoint, and people were like, lads, like, don't keep us out here all night. Like, if you're going to drop out, like, drop out early, drop out early. And
Yeah.
so I was just like, we're definitely going to finish this thing, like, Anyway, long story short, it was probably the most horrific pain I've still ever been in my entire life. But we finished. We both finished within the 30-hour mark. I finished in 28 hours. My buddy Mark actually finished slightly ahead of me, and we got it done. But again, it was the same with the marathon. I was kind of like left after this huge achievement, this 100-mile race, everything that I had kind of, everything that I had thought was going to kind of, get me onto this track, that I was gonna find my renaissance of my life, like David Goggins did. David Goggins had found his way, and had found his um I don't want to say salvation and make it kind of religious, but like he had found his kind of his way, and that's what I was looking for, and it didn't happen for me. After I finished that race in August, I was kind of again left searching, and then on January 1st, I woke up hungover, reeking of cigarettes, Guinness all over my shirt, just still in the clothes that I was in from the night before, and woke up and I was like, "Well, I've just gotta change these things up." And I heard from my buddy Mark, who had stayed on the ultramarathon trail, that there was a 200-mile race happening in the UK, and that he was entered into it. So I said, "Yeah, I'll do it with you." And I entered that. Long story short, I like, that race, the Enduroman 200-mile ultramarathon, hadn't had a finisher since 2016. Only one person had ever managed to finish the race within the 60-hour time limit. And I entered it. I actually ended up winning the race, being the only finisher that year, being the first finisher since 2016, and becoming the second person ever to finish it within the 60-hour time limit.
Did you finally have that sense of gratification from it all, or?
Absolutely. But it wasn't necessarily what had actually changed for me in that time. Was I was always focusing on the external. I was always focusing on the world, and how the world was going to solve my problems for me, and how, I was going to ask the world to solve my problems, and it was going to give me the answers. I was never asking anything of myself. I was never asking Conor why he wanted to do it, why he wanted to keep going, why did he want to achieve these things, why did he want to, do something, why did he want to do these things. And when I started asking myself those questions, it started leading me down this track of thinking over my past, of thinking over the years that I had struggled with my mental health and the years that I struggled with depression, and it started to make sense for me. It started to make sense for me as I kind of went through it. And by the time I had actually gotten to the start line of the 200-mile race, man, I felt like a weight had been lifted. I felt lighter. I felt like my mind was light. I felt like it was focused. I wasn't worried about anybody else. I wasn't worried about any how the runners were going to run their race. All I was worried about was Conor O'Keeffe and running his race and doing his own thing. And once that happened, and once that became the way that my mind worked, it just it kind of made sense. And because I had made sense of the let's say, I suppose, emotional pain, the physical pain was okay, because the physical pain was linear and it was understandable, and I could dissect it, and I knew exactly where it was coming from, and I could understand it. And like that means then, like, when I can understand that kind of pain, it's very, very easy to talk myself out of it, and to keep getting myself back on this track. And you know, once I kind of realized that I was going to feel pain, I was going to feel a lot of pain. And like, I could tell you some war stories from that 200-mile race. It was absolutely insane. But once I knew that was part of it, it just made sense.
Yeah, the kind of the pain of it all, and I mean, they always say, like, the dragon always minds the gold. We can't get anything worthwhile in life without having to suffer in some sense, because it offers that contrast. You have no foreground without a background. You have no inside without the outside, and it offers that. And I suppose to backtrack a bit before, so I suppose your first marathon and then into your 100-mile, and you still were kind of seeking that sense of meaning. And you were saying kind of before that your background was like the Thai boxing. Um, had you had that experience in the Thai and stuff before as well, or do you find it's just with the running?
Yeah, I did for sure. Like, I suppose, like any young fella, it all kind of stemmed from wanting to belong and wanting to fit in. I wanted to fit in when I was a young fella. Like, I was a chubby young fella. I was very overweight. Like, 'cause I had a really bad diet. And I just ate a lot of comfort eating, like, because I just didn't feel great about myself. And like, I saw, like, this was the late 90s, early noughties, like, they hadn't invented avocados yet, like, and just people didn't eat the same way as they do now, like, you know what I mean. I used to eat jelly snakes and Mr. Freezes for lunch, like, you know what I mean. So
Diabetes for dinner.
diabetes for dinner, like,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. So I kind of I felt like, very, very held back by my physical stature, you know what I mean, by the way I looked and by the way I felt. But then I kind of made a point, then, that, I wanted to change, and I wanted to get fit, and so I joined the gym. And kind of coincidentally, in and around that time, I grew about a foot as well. So I basically started going to the gym and getting very, 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 very into my nutrition and my health, and going to the gym regularly, looking after myself. And I started to get fitter, and I started to get really fit. And then I was like, okay, I want to see what this new body can do, like what this new Conor can do. So an opportunity came about for me to raise money for charity to go to climb Kilimanjaro. So I did. I headed off to Kilimanjaro, with a charity, and I ended up climbing up Kilimanjaro, and that was kind of, when I look back upon this now, it was my first time in my life that I was put into this position of, you know, are you going to give up? Are you going to back down? Or are you going to keep going through the pain? And it was about 300 meters from the very, very top. I was at the top of, near the top of Kilimanjaro, and I had really bad altitude sickness. Like, altitude sickness, if I can explain it to anybody listening now that hasn't had it before, it's like the drunkest you've ever been and the most hungover you've ever been combined, like multiplied by 10. And it's just a horrific, like, I was getting sick blood, I was nauseous, I was dizzy, I couldn't really stand and walk. And Graham, was our guide. He's a former Royal Marines commando. He had a glass eye. Actually, he'd lost an eye on a tour abroad, and he was looking at me as I was sitting down on this rock, and he was like, "Conor, you need to start putting one foot in front of the other, or I'm taking you down this mountain, and your climb is done." That's 300 meters from the top, from the very top of Africa. I could not go back to Ireland and tell my dad, who's been a soldier for the last 40 years, you know, I didn't get there. I got 300 meters from the top. So I picked up my sticks and I made it to the top. And when I got back, I thought that, like, this was going to be my thing. This was going to be the thing that got me onto this track of like belonging and having done something worthwhile and have this kind of meaning. But I was kind of it was the same kind of story with the running. In my future, that I kind of felt this hollowness, and then soon after that, in more kind of searching and more searching for these things, like John, when yourself, Jack, when you're a young fella, like there's three kind of main areas that you want to be kind of good at: school, sports, and girls. And I was strictly average at all three of them. So I was like, I was waiting to see, what was I going to be good at, like. So I soon after I got back from Kilimanjaro, I walked into Siam Warriors Muay Thai gym in the north side of Cork, and just instantly fell in love. I had seen all the Rocky films. I fell in love with all the Rocky films. I was like, oh man, this is just. I walked in, and as soon as I went in there, just like hit me in the face. Like, there was like a smell of hard work inside in there. There was lads like shouting and roaring as they were hitting the pads, and the clatter of the leather and the sweat and blood and everything. It was just, I just fell in love with it straight away. It was just like my senses were being danced on, and I was just absolutely engulfed in it straight away. And that just became my entire life. Then, from when I was a young teenager into my early 20s, Thai boxing just became everything to me.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like, I thought that I'd finally found this thing that was gonna, make me feel good and was gonna give me some sort of self-worth, because I was struggling at that time, even as a teenager, and all the way through my time as a Thai boxer. I was actually struggling with self-doubt and struggling with actually borderline self-loathing. I used to talk to myself terribly, and always say that I wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't going to be able to make anything of myself, and all of these things that I had drilled into my head for years. And even throughout my time Thai boxing, even when I was winning fights and doing well and getting praise, I never believed any of it. I felt like I was this imposter all the time. I had about 22 fights, and I think I won 16 of them. And I every single one of those fights, I actually thought I was going to lose, because I had this built into me that, like, I have to work harder than everyone else, because I'm not as good as anybody else, as the other people that I'm facing. That made me the hardest working guy in the gym. I was the first in, last out. I was always the guy doing extra work after training was finished. Everybody else would be in the showers chatting shit to each other, and I'd be out still hitting the bag, or still doing sit ups or press ups and things like that.
Hmm.
And it wasn't because I felt like I wanted to train hard and that I was getting joy from it. It was that I felt that I was so much worse than my competition, that I had to be fitter than them, that I at least had to have that advantage over them. When, like, anybody could see from the outside, I had a real talent for it. I
Yeah.
had a real talent for it. But it kind of culminated then after a couple of years of this, of Thai boxing being everything to me. In 2013, I fought for an Irish title. I fought for the light middleweight Irish title, and I was just so excited when I got the chance. I was like, everything I had been leading up to this point was just to get this Irish title shot, and maybe if I won this title and I got this leather belt strapped around my waist, maybe then I might finally believe that I was actually good at it,
Yeah.
that I believe in myself, and that I didn't have to, constantly keep winning fights, so that I could, keep this kind of momentum going. And it got to the night. I fought a ridiculously hard fight. So did my opponent. We're actually great friends to this day, actually. And we fought all the way to the very end. And then in the last minute of the last round, he hit me with a left hook and knocked me unconscious.
Hmm.
Um, I was so badly knocked unconscious now, Jack. Right, I had to get my eyes stitched closed, after the fight. and I was in the back, and the doctor was stitching my eye shut, like, my eyebrow, and I looked at her and I said, is everyone having a good time? And she was like, I think so. I just want to make sure that everyone's having a good time. I thought it was my 21st birthday that had happened the year previous. So like I was absolutely out of it, like, And after that, I just took that that loss so badly emotionally and mentally, that like my passion and my love for Thai boxing was gone,
Mm.
completely gone. I had 5 years of where it was my entire life, and it was just dwindling, falling away, and I completely just lost all want and desire for it. And after that, fought on a couple more times, but it was kind of dead from there. Like,
Mm. Would you kind of say during that time, because quite often when we want to set up a goal or we want to move towards anything, it's kind of, we ask ourselves this question: are we running towards something that we kind of feel like we don't have for whatever reason, or are we kind of running from something that we feel that we shouldn't be, or that we're afraid of being, or something like that? Did you feel like you were more, whether in the running or in the Thai boxing, that you were trying to get away from your old identity of yourself, or more you wanted to run towards this identity, or fight towards this identity that you maybe knew you always were set to be, or were kind of half afraid that you could potentially be, if do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think I was running towards a kind of this idea more than anything. It was just this idea that I had, and it was like I couldn't separate myself from the two. I couldn't separate. I was Conor, the Thai boxer. I couldn't separate. Thai boxing wasn't something that I actually did. It was who I was, and I couldn't separate myself from that. I tell people all the time. I do a lot of public speaking these days, and I tell people an awful lot of times that it's a very, very dangerous thing when you feel like you can't live without something, or you feel that your whole identity is tied into something that you do, and because you should never really have something at such close regard that you feel that you're inseparable from it. Because even though running now is what a lot of people would attach me to, I don't attach myself to running whatsoever. I Running is merely now an expression of how I feel, and an expression of the kind of mind state that I'm in right now. And when you realize that, and when you realize that the things that you do are just that, they are just the things that you do, and they're not who you are, then it's a far less dangerous relationship, because you can live without it. You can live with it, and you can live without it. And that's, I've seen myself transform from that, where Thai boxing was that thing that I was clinging on to. I was clinging on to Thai boxing because um, Thai boxing was like a life raft, and around it was like shark infested waters. I knew Thai boxing, and I was comfortable in it, and I was comfortable with it, and I had made it my own. But anything outside of that, I didn't know about it, and I hadn't had any success anywhere else. So it was kind of like, I'm just going to stay here, and I'm going to do this, and I'm not only going to do it, it's going to control my whole life. Like, I didn't go on leave and start holidays. I didn't go to college balls. I didn't go out in rag week or freshers week. I was fighting all the time, well, through Thai boxing as well, it actually made me an incredibly diligent student as well, because I didn't, party or drink or do any of that other stuff that students kind of did. So, when I wasn't training, I was in the library. And I was training. I was studying law in UCC, and I was in the library studying every day. I had the most monkish lifestyle you could ever think of. I used to get up in the morning. I'd go into my lectures. I'd study between lectures, and then lectures would finish. I'd either train in the morning. I would usually train in the morning, and then I'd finish up my lectures and my studies, and I'd go up and I'd train in the evening as well. And I'd go home, and I get to bed early, and I'd watch what I ate, and everything was just surrounded by just me being I suppose, being a student athlete. You know what I mean? And then when it all fell apart, then it was like a baptism of fire. I just fell into all of the bad habits at once,
Yeah.
and I fell into all the things that I should have been getting out of my system in college.
Mm.
And you know, that thing to go back to the question, you know, you're running from it. I think I was actually kind of running from that as well. I was running from the part of me, the part of Conor that took the easy way out and did those things like drinking and eating bad and doing all of these things, because I had touched base with that in my teens and it didn't really sit well with me. And then when I found Thai boxing, it drew me away from all of that. And then when I got out of it, it just completely turned the other way around.
And Connor, did you feel that during this time keeping yourself really busy, was it a way to avoid what was going on underneath? Or did that kind of cross your mind at that time?
At that time, it wasn't crossing my mind at all. I was thinking so narrowly about things that, like, you know, when I think back on them now, I'm like, Jesus Christ, you know, like, how could you ever have thought like this, or how could you ever have acted like that? But it's very very easy to see these things in hindsight and see these things after you've actually looked inward and you've worked upon yourself. It's very very easy to you know, to think of those things and to look at it in that way. But at the time, man, I was just like, I didn't really. I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was in trouble. I knew that Thai boxing was not healthy. My relationship with Thai boxing was not healthy. I knew that, but I didn't care enough to stop, because if I stopped, I felt that what was waiting for me was worse, or, you know, whatever semblance of self worth that I had at the time with Thai boxing, I wouldn't have had without it. And like when I went to the reverse side of it, when I changed up that monk lifestyle and I changed up the Thai boxing, the regimental side of things, fuck, yeah, my life just whirlwinded out of control. Like, you know, in terms of my own mind, I'm fairly sure that a lot of people from the outside would have been like, oh, he's just in his 20s, he's having, you know, he's on the drinks and blah blah blah, he's grand. And I think that at certain times people did kind of maybe think, Jesus, you know, maybe Connor has an old problem, you know. But like, inside my own head was just the worst place to be at that time. So when I felt like that I was swapping distractions. Like Thai boxing was a huge distraction for me, and then I just swapped it for going out and drinking, and then I started smoking. Then, because, you know, and these are all things that I just thought would never be me. You know, while I was Thai boxing, I never thought I'd be out, you know, in smoking areas, fucking chuffing fags and you know, drinking myself silly every time I went out. Like, there was no such thing as the one or two. It was Balubas all the time. And like, I when I started to go out, you know, I had a girlfriend for while I was in Thai boxing, you know, for that 5 years, and they both kind of finished at the same time. Thai boxing and the girlfriend both finished at the same time. So when I was left out, I was like, you know, I had no idea about women, or, you know, picking women up or chatting to girls or anything like that, like, you know. And because I had been in a relationship for so long and I'd been in this regimented lifestyle for so long, I just hadn't been around it. I hadn't had any experience in it. So when I went out and then, you know, I was talking to girls and girls were talking to me, I was like, okay, this feels good. And I clung on to that good feeling then. And then I think where Thai boxing and doing good in Thai boxing and getting adulation for winning fights, I think that was taken over by girls then. I think girls kind of just took over then for that period of time. And that's why I started smoking, so that I was inside in smoking areas with girls and you could actually chat with them and stuff like that. And then, you know, that led me out into more nights out, to more drinking and smoking cigarettes and doing all these things. And like, I'm very honest about my life. I'm very honest about my lifestyle. Thank God I never touched synthetic drugs. When I moved over to Canada and stuff like that, I smoked an awful lot of weed and stuff like that. I never took any synthetic drugs. Thank God I never fell into that, because I think that would have been just the ruin of me. And I kind of knew that, and that's why I kind of stayed away from it, because I was like, you know, I couldn't control my impulses in terms of alcohol or cigarettes. So I just thought that I wouldn't be able to control my impulses with synthetic drugs. So I just never took like cocaine or anything like that. And it wasn't as if it wasn't around. It was around plenty. It was just, it never held any allure to me, you know. Um, but I really did just spend that time punishing myself. And I think everybody, as again from the outside, would have thought Conor's this lad about town, and he's always mad for pulling women and all these things. But like, it just caused me tremendous anxiety, and just caused me again to just focus my intention, my negative attention inward, and just completely take it all out on myself. And it was again, I was my own worst enemy, and I was picking my own life apart, and I couldn't talk to myself in any positive way. So again, I was falling into old patterns again.
Yeah, I suppose we love to, especially when we're struggling. We're way out in our prefrontal cortex, over analyzing everything, and whatever we're connected to, for whatever that means, whether it's relationships or whether it's drink and drugs and smoking areas and all these things. And it's kind of like that quietness inside us, which when we were kids and we had that little voice. I mean, it was the most basic, simple truths spoken, probably at about a word a minute. Really slow thought, and that tends to freak the absolute shit out of us. So from my experience, we tend
Yeah,
to accumulate all of this nonsense to fill that void. And I don't know, it seems like when we set up even goals within that orientation, so we might be in that orientation, then we think, oh, I'll be great and I'll do this thing and that thing. And when we get it, we're we're still not really any the better. Yeah, we may have learned some things, and learned some mistakes, but we're still seeking something because we were kind of fishing in the wrong lake, so to speak. And drugs and all that, like it's a very slippery slope down there. No, it's obviously test as you will. But even things, as I say, like that nightlife scene. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling for loads of reasons, and you never know, because I suppose on the face of things, when most of us are conversing, we're not really having a real conversation. We're saying, "Hi, how are you? What's the crack?"
yeah. It's, oh, how you doing? How
Yeah.
you keeping? Good. Good. And that's the kind of as much that you'll get out of it when people say that. But since I started this whole thing, I've been sober now for going on 15 months, and sorry, going on 14 months, and I have I've never been asked more questions about anything else. And I'm a runner now, and there's loads of runners out there in the Instagram sphere. I get loads of questions about running, but I get twice as many questions around drink, and around how do you stay off drink? How do you stay away from nights out? Do you miss drink? How could how do you get over fear of missing out? How do you do, blah blah blah, all these things, because people do easily get sucked into it. And if I was talking to a guy and he was saying to me, at that time when I was stuck into it and I was drinking a lot and I was going out a lot, if I was talking to this guy and he goes, yeah, I'm actually sober for 14 months there. I'm an ultra marathon runner, like, I run multiple marathons in a row and all these kind of stuff. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's very good, but like, how do you stay off the drink? Do you know?
Mm.
It's like,
Yeah.
people just want to see, they want to see somebody else fighting the demons that they have. And what weapons did you use to fight your demons? Because I'll use the same weapons in mine, you know?
Isn't that kind of hoping that, Jesus, if I have the same weapons as the famous warrior or whatever, I'll be the famous warrior too. It's like
Absolutely.
buying Lionel Messi's football boots won't make you messy.
Exactly. That don't know, that's a very, very good way of putting it, because I don't think people actually understand that, if I tell you how I did it, that's just going to be the exact same way that I've been told a million times how to do it. You can't learn really how to do it. You have to ask yourself why you want to do it. Because if you don't ask yourself, and if you don't actually dig into the meaning behind it for yourself, you're look, I'm not going to say you're never going to do it, because that's not a very hopeful way to look at it, but you're going to find it incredibly difficult to do it. And
Hmm.
it's far easier for you to do it. It's actually easier to do it the hardest way. What I mean by that is, the hardest way is to actually take a look at the reasons why you do it. Because if you look at the reasons why you do it, it will make a lot more sense to you than how you give up. Because if you look at just how you give up, you're already starting at the finish line, and you need to start at the start line. and it's the path in between the start and the finish line is what will help you stay there, is what will help you stay on that track. Because if you try and start at the finish line and go backwards, it just doesn't work like that. And I really do feel like, from all of the ups and downs throughout my life, and all of the things, that all the mistakes I've made and the bad decisions I've made and all of these things, I had to go back over every single one of them, and I had to forgive myself for them, and I had to move forward from them, and I had to press on from them, because if I didn't, uh, the nights where things are not going well, and the nights that where my life is not, a highlight reel. I'm injured, and Project 32 has been suspended. I'm sick. I don't have, I'm not able to train as well as I do. If I had all of these things stacked up before, and I hadn't done the work on myself, I'd be out having, a couple of drinks or whatever the case may be. Obviously, with coronavirus and all that kind of stuff, you probably wouldn't, but it would lead me back into the old ways of life, of just sitting down, eating shit, and getting a couple of cans to drink at home, and well, what I was going to say as a kind of a finishing point was, because I've actually went from the start line, and I took the hardest route possible to get to where I am now. It makes it an awful lot easier for me to go through the shit times now, and for me to actually still look forward, and still see the light over the horizon, and still see a way of me doing these things. Because if I hadn't done that, and I had skipped to the end, without doing any of these things, those things would creep in, and I wouldn't know how to deal with them. And I'd be straight back out, back onto the road that I was on before, where I was hating myself, hating the way I was living, hating the way I was acting, and the way that I was thinking, and and back from that. So if I'm going to give anybody advice that's listening to this podcast right now, is don't try and take the easy way. Don't try and take the easy way, and try and, pick up my sword and my shield, and try and use those, to combat your demons the way I have done mine, because they'll be too heavy for you. You won't be able to carry them like I have, because I've done the work to carry them. You need to be able to sit back and look at your own life, and look at the reasons why you've gotten to this position where you feel like you want to do it. A lot of people will need help. A lot of people will need to seek professional help. They'll need counseling, they'll need therapy, and they'll need a way and a map to do that. And I wish that I had actually realized that I needed that back when I didn't. And I'm still toying with the idea of, after Project 32, seeking counselling, because you could never ever think that you can't see your life from a different angle, and you can't shed a different light upon it. So I'm not all at all closed off to the idea of myself doing counselling down the way. Very, very happy in the four corners of my mind right now, but you can never ever stop learning about yourself, and you can never ever stop putting one foot in front of the other. And if you do need that help, go and seek it, but don't try and take that easy option. Don't try and take that straight linear path. Take the thorny road, take the uneven path, because when you get there, oh my God, is it a wonderful feeling to be happy in your own skin.
And we see that truth kind of, a lot of days, hopefully, for people, is that, you might have a big day at work, and you might bypass a lunch here and there, and you get home after a good day and you eat your dinner or whatever, and it's more gratifying then, because you put in the hard work. And this idea of, people listening here and they're thinking, oh, I'll just pick up Conor's sword and do it the way Conor did. To me, that is kind of, it's like, what's wrong with my sword? Do I not love myself enough to be able to use my own sword, to be able to craft my own, tool in this life, so I can go forth into the world, and it's this idea, we don't love ourselves enough in that sense, and then we set ourselves up for failure, because we're trying to compare to this other person, or this other ideology, or whatever it is. And that's all very, very shallow. And generally, like, I mean, when we think in that sense, we look back at the past, and we kind of carry it on our shoulders, and we think, oh Jesus, wasn't that awful, and wasn't that awful, and that awful. There's a kind of seen a strategy recently. It was really kind of I think it's a nice kind of strategy to apply. But is that going back along, if something bad happened to you at any point in your life, whether it was last week or when you were 4 years of age, is to not so much analyze the bad thing that happened, but more analyze the person it happened to before it happened, and kind of to look at that person and say, do you know what, I understand that you dealt with what was about to happen to you in that way. That, I accept and I love you because, look, you couldn't have expected what was about to happen. You couldn't have been ready. You once you at least give it your best, that will help you for all the next iterations of chaos that are going to happen. Because it's one thing after another, whether that's, if we do it willingly, like setting up races and starting a sport or starting a challenge, fantastic, and we can practice that process outside of when it's absolutely necessary. But you may be sure in life it's going to be necessary sometimes. And it's not what happens to us, it's how we get over it. But if we don't love the person or the thing that is it, that has to actually get over it, then, we're always going to be resisting ourselves. And that's kind of then the idea of getting out of your own way, and again, like, if I want to be using somebody else's sword, like, again, why not use mine? Why not? Like, what is so terrible about the self that we can't do it ourselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like I talk when I do my public talks. I talk about kind of the three pillars for me that have kind of basically helped me keep on track, and they're accountability, gratitude, and compassion. Compassion is a big part of it, and you just touched on it there. Is you know whenever I did think back uh, at the periods in time in my life where I felt that I had, where you make your mistakes, or just things happen to you that just fucking, throw you for a loop. When you do look back at those things, it's important as the first the kind of pillar suggests, accountability. It's important to take responsibility for your side of it, but it is very, very important to be compassionate. And the way that I phrase it is, I was operating with the best information I had to hand at that time. And it's this exact same way as you just said there is, I acted upon it in the best way that I could at that time. Yeah, I made some mistakes. Yeah, I probably made some bad decisions, and I went for the easier option. I went down a different route. And I went down a route that I don't think, we saw ourselves going. But that's okay. And just because that happened doesn't mean that it has to continue, and doesn't mean that it has to be who you are and the way your life is. As soon as I realized that, I thought, I kind of jokingly say, like, I used to go into Costa Coffee and buy two Americanos, one for me and one for my demons. I used to sit with myself, like, after it started to come while I was running. These thoughts started to come while I was running. I remember one morning, it was really cold February morning, and I was heading out for a 30-kilometer run. I'd always start the run. I'd always have my entire run music in my ears, because it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning in February. Like, no one was out on the road, so I wanted someone, want someone to keep me company. Like, I'd throw the music on. I remember I was going out for a 30-kilometer run, and 300 meters into this run, I heard beep boop, like my Bluetooth headphones died, and I started to think about all these, backtracking through my life and backtracking through these things that had happened to me. And I started to put them together, and I started to make sense. And then I didn't have to be running anymore. I could do it at any call up. I could be driving, or I could be in the shower, or I could be sitting down for a coffee, and I could think about these things. And whenever I used to think about things like the Irish title fight, me being knocked unconscious in front of 2,000 people, in front of my friends and family, I used to get that fight or flight reaction. I used to get that heightened heart rate, a burst of heat, and my pulse would raise, and I'd feel that inside my being. But it changed. I didn't have that reaction anymore. I was able to think about it, and there wasn't that voice in my head going, no, 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 we don't think about that, Connor. We don't think about that, man. That's in the past.
Mm.
But as soon as I realized that I could think about it, and I could think about it rationally, and I could actually take a step outside of the ring and see what was actually happening, to take a step outside of the Connor that was there and see what was happening, I was like, Connor, you did your best. You did your very, very best. You knew what you were signing up to when you got into the ring. You were going to pit your skills against another man's skills. That man's skills outdid yours that night. Does not mean that he's a better person than you. Doesn't mean that he's even a better fighter than you. It just means that on that night, you put your skills up against that man's. You should be proud of being so brave that you would get in and you would go to war with this other man, for this title or whatever the case may be. And you should be proud for the training you've done, for the person that you've been throughout that whole time, being humble, being respectful, all of these things that that you just don't think about when you're in the horrors over it, like, and you feel so terrible about yourself. You don't think about these things. But as soon as I thought about it in that way, and I showed myself that compassion, it just didn't affect me anymore. I can openly talk about these things, and they're comfortable for me now. It's like talking about what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. It just doesn't cause me that anxiety anymore, because I understand them now, and I understand Conor now, and I understand the way he was at that time. So, as you said, you've got to pick up your own sword and your own shield, and you've got to fight these things the way that you know how.
I suppose as that, as we're going out into that world, and look, the wind will blow, the rain will pour, and the sun will shine, and all of those things will happen, good, bad, and indifferent. But I think if we're not grounded in our own sense of, quiet, and our own sense of orientation and so on, we're too easily blown off track, and again, it hints on all of those things, really, like that compassion side of it, which is in essence loving yourself, the flaws included. And then I suppose that idea, the accountability, which probably goes in two ways, in the sense that, look, we have to be responsible when good stuff happen to us and bad stuff happen to us. We are the observers of our own life. And that's kind of, I don't know, for anyone suffering, they kind of have to, like you mentioned there, when you were out running, and that time when your Bluetooth died, it offered a moment of silence. But even with music, they say the music is between the notes. It's in the space between that the actual real substance is. And when we quieten our minds and things like that, and I know when I was young, I grew up doing a lot of kind of stonemasonry, things like that. And one of the earliest lessons, now I took it as a metaphorical lesson, of course, was this idea of however often you need, and hopefully that'll be quite often, is step back and look at what you've done, and see, then, analyze that objectively without kind of egotistical kind of judgments on whether it's successful or not, or different things, but analyze it and see how, what lessons you want to take from that previous meter of stone you've done, or whatever it was, and how much of that you want to carry on with you, and how much do you want to kind of forgive and let go, and it's that constant process. And
Yeah.
definitely, and most people listening, that we'll all have our different areas of venting, whether it's doing yoga, or going for runs, or doing whatever, maybe writing, or different things, is that they allow us to channel that energy. Now we can let it channel us and keep going down that route, where we might be slightly more likely for a relapse in that sense, or we can gain that kind of conscious ownership, that accountability side of it. Um, and I suppose, going back along again earlier, you mentioned like the counselling, and you mentioned like people out there and people seeking help. Had you seeked professional help at the time? Because I know you're fundraising a lot now for Pieta House, which is absolutely fantastic. But had you done much in terms of going to it yourself at that time?
No, I actually hadn't. That's why I'm so passionate nowadays about raising awareness for Pieta, and raising funds for Pieta. Is that I wish I knew more, or like I could have known more. Only I think I was just so, like, the big barrier for me, Jack, at that time was, I felt guilty about feeling bad. I felt guilty about feeling bad because I had this great family, and my parents had sacrificed an awful lot to get me educated, and move me out of a neighborhood into a nicer neighborhood, and had done these things for me that you know I felt like, Joe, what do I have to be unhappy about? I was doing well in sport. I had a girlfriend. I had all these things going for me, and even when I finished up Thai boxing, I still felt like I had so much going for me that I just couldn't. I wasn't allowing myself to feel bad, which was absolute nonsense, because it doesn't matter what happens in the external world if you can't if you can't be yourself in your own mind, and you can't actually realize that you're not feeling great, then it doesn't matter what you have on the external side of things. But I felt like if I had sought help at that time, it made it real. you know it made it real for me that I was depressed, and that I was near suicidal, and it made it real for me for those things, because all the time, all I was thinking to myself was, "Look, Connor, you're grand. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be fucking, you shouldn't be feeling this bad. You've got all these things going for you. Well, why are you feeling terrible?" And I knew that if I had went and actually sought help, and had went for help, it made it real for me. And
Yeah.
it should be real. It should be real for you, because it's going to be, it's not going to be real until it's fucking D-Day, and it's time, where people take their own lives, and it sneaks up on you, in that regard. Like, I've had highs and I've had lows throughout those times. I've had highs where good things be happening to me, and the external world of my life is going well, and I can sometimes kind of forget and escape the kind of feelings that I was having. And then something bad would happen, and I'd plummet then for weeks and months into this abyss. And like, that's just, that shouldn't be your reality. Like, your reality should be that no matter if good things or bad things happen, that you kind of stay at an even keel all the time. You don't want to feel like euphoric for a long time, and you don't want to feel plunging lows either. You want to be in that middle ground. You want to be able to be, in an area, in a state that you're going to be able to operate from. So I say to people, if anybody feels like they don't have that in their life, just to go get help. Reach out that helping hand, because it needs to be real for you. It needs to be real. If you feel like, oh, I've all these things going for me, I shouldn't feel this way. Yeah, you shouldn't feel this way, but you do. So try and figure out why you do. And if you need help with somebody helping you to figure that out, then you need that help. And I didn't think about it in that way. I thought about it as, oh, that's weakness from me now, because I meant to be this tough guy. I meant to be this guy that, whatever challenges he faces, or whatever challenges come about his way, he'll be able to take on. And the one challenge that I couldn't take on was my own mind. And if you have that thought running through your head, it's very, very hard for you to reach out, and to find help. So I would say to men, especially, to men that I'm speaking to, like, because I know that it would be more prevalent to men. Drop the ego. Drop the ego, like, and seek that help. And, like, it's okay for me to say to people that I'm open to getting counselling, but even though I don't feel bad, I don't feel depressed whatsoever. I've never been happier in my life, and I've never been more in that ground where I can just be, and I in that up and down lifestyle is gone now. I'm in that even keel, and I have these even days where I just feel happy walking around my own mind. I'm still open to the fact that I could get counselling in the future, and maybe you could help me with more stuff, and it can help me uncover more things. And there's probably things that I think I know, but I'm making up my own script about it.
Yeah.
Um, so you can never learn too much about yourself. Do you know what I mean? And if you need help to do that, there's loads of charities around it. Pieta House is specifically for suicide prevention and suicide bereavement services, but there's other services like the Samaritans and Bernardo's, and they do fantastic work. And I myself actually want to set up my own foundation after I finish up Project 32 to help at-risk youths. Just coming from personal experience myself, that I would love to get into involvement with that. There's loads of charities out there that will help you do it. They're free, they're confidential, and they're there to listen to you. And I implore anybody who's feeling bad to go and seek them out.
Even beyond that, I suppose the mere act of compassion, even amongst ourselves, amongst anyone we converse with, and it can be a stranger. Like, we probably don't converse enough. We talk a lot. That's for shit sure. We spend a lot of time talking about the semantics and the stuff that doesn't matter and that we can feel comfortable in. But I think people need to have more of that conversation where we're delving in and not just on the positive side, like the where we can own the negative emotion too. Because if we're always only positive orientated, it won't end up there. And what we'll end up doing is we'll be probably stuck in that middle monotonous ground. And for me, that's always the worst. I mean, I prefer to be angry than just merely content, or I prefer to have that little bit of something even pissing me off or different things like that. So at least it gives some drive.
Yeah,
And we tend to run away from these emotions too. And counseling and different services like that, or even Jesus with a friend, if you feel you can't afford counseling, or you might be embarrassed that it might get back to your friends or different things, then bloody talk to anyone, maybe find a stranger, and have a chat with them, somebody who won't judge and where you don't feel judge. Or
I think in the environment that we live in now, I think that people are an awful lot more comfortable with those uncomfortable conversations. Um, like I even know
mm,
from my own experience, just since I've been so verbal and I've been so outspoken about these things and about mental health issues, I've had friends that have been talking to me about things that they haven't told their parents. I have, or haven't told their loved one, haven't told their partner. They'll talk to me because there's some sort of a haven. I want to tell people that it's not because I'm open about these things that that you should feel comfortable to talk to someone like that. Any one of your friends that loves you and cares for you will be there for you,
mm,
and be able to hash it out and have these chats with you. And I've I have friends where I know I'll get 100% from them. I like they won't half ass it with me. They'll they'll talk to me, and they'll tell me if I'm wrong. They'll call me out on my shit. They'll also tell me when I'm being too hard on myself, and they'll tell me when I'm doing my best and I need to realize that. And they'll tell me these things if I don't get it, myself, and which I'll do quite often these days. But you'll always have those times where you miss the mark, and I feel like a lot of people would benefit from just from speaking to people, like. And you know it's one of those things where if those services are out there and they're there for you, and they are really like they are there for you, and they have heard everything, believe me, they've heard every single thing, every possible combination of things they've heard. So they're going to be completely and utterly non-judgmental. They're going to tell you, you're in a safe place. You're in a place where we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're gonna help you through it. They've heard it all. They've seen it all. There is nothing new under the sun, and they'll be able to help you through that. That's probably one of the best things that I could say to anybody is, you know, they have heard everything. You try them, and they have heard everything, and they will know how to properly manage that. Your friends are a fantastic resource, and your family are a fantastic resource. But the people with professional help, the people that you wouldn't ask your neighbor if you had a cold. You go see a doctor. It's about getting that help that people may need at that time, because I took the hard way, as I said, but I wish I had some bit of a roadmap or some bit of a guidance in that kind of a way that might have helped me through it, and might have even helped me discover more things about myself at that time. But I just didn't go for it. And it's something that, I definitely don't regret, because I'm here now, and I'm here, still breathing. I'm happy, and I'm enjoying my life. But it could just as easily not have been the case, and I could not be here. So I just don't want anybody to be in that position, and to seek that help when they need it.
it is it's that thin line. It can really go either way with people. And as you say, like when we have
Yeah,
these services, the likes of Pieta, Samaritans, all these things, I mean, why not bloody use it? I mean, if nothing else, it's a free tool to sharpen yourself, um, to
absolutely.
be absolutely basic. And that's probably including people who are not necessarily in the absolute depths of despair, but maybe they've a mini meaning crisis, it could be a career issue, could be a relationship issue, so on. I mean, why not use what we have? Like there's plenty of good people out there that are wanting to bring from it, like therapists out there that are wanting to bring their own value to the world, and their value is what they're trying to give in that sense. They're trying to allow this platform for people to improve, and they don't come up with that, out of nothing. That whole sense of compassion, It's incredibly important. So it's no surprise in 2020 to see we have these services. And that's kind of, I suppose, normalizing it, kind of, in the sense that, it was normal to go to Sunday Mass. Why can't it be normal to go for, a mental check-in or go for whatever as well? Not that it'll be overused and abused by those who don't need it, but perhaps we all kind of need it in some sense. I mean, if there's anybody out there who has no area at all in their life to improve, well, then, in my opinion, that's kind of, well, one, it's totally unrealistic, and two, you're probably near your deathbed if you've nothing at all to be improving.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
it's that sense. So I think if we normalize that whole process, and we all we can do to do that is by the likes of what we're doing now, conversation, no pussyfooting around the issues and stuff like that. But for those who aren't ready to do it, just even with their buddies, as you said, the safe space. And there's an awful lot to be said for that safety, because when we're in that sense of depression or whatever, it's that total lack of safety. It's that distrust in the universe that it doesn't have us. But we see enough that it completely and utterly does. We see people like yourself putting a bloody sweat on, putting, yourself through the wars for other people to have this. Now, you're not the only one in the world that is going to great lengths to create that, but I hope people see the beauty in that they say, they see that, Jesus, here's somebody who sees so much value in this kind of service, this kind of thing, that they're willing to, you know, nearly break down over it, nearly break their whole system down. And,
Yeah,
that in itself kind of intrigues, it kind of begs the question of, maybe there's actually something to that there's a real underlying value there that we can kind of tap into.
that's what it really is about for me, Jack. Is, yes, I want to raise €100,000 for Pieta House, but for me, I think there's tremendous value in anyone that comes across the story, anyone that comes across what I'm doing. And if it sparks that element in them that they might want to seek the service out because they feel like, they're going to take their own life, or they feel like their friend or family member might take their own lives, or they're not dealing well with somebody that they know has taken their own life, that they will contact Pieta, and that reverberates around. And if anybody that's, not just Pieta. I don't want Pieta having a monopoly over helping people. I want people to know that there's multiple different services out there. But it is the message. It is the, like, I am just the vessel, let's say, for this message of hope, and that, things, people say, like, oh, you want to show people what people are capable of. I'm like, yeah, no, people have done that 1,000 times over. There's people done way, way harder things than I have done for me. But what I wanted to do was, I wanted it just to be personable, for people to just see that, I am testing myself to my limits, to Conor O'Keeffe's limits. They might be different to somebody else's, but I'm testing myself to my limits. But that there's hope, and that there's light in the message, and that, you know if it sparks thought in other people's heads, whether that be about getting help, or whether that be about how they can help, or how they can help other people, or how they can help themselves, and how they can start, maybe if it sparks a grain of thought in somebody else's mind about their own lives, and gets them on another path. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just so worthwhile for me. And it doesn't seem like a chore or anything like that for me. It just seems like there's nothing else at this moment in time in my life that I would rather be doing. And that's where I want people to be, is to be in that position where they feel like I am actually doing exactly what I want to do with my life right now.
And that's I suppose it's a beautiful light, I mean, many people don't kind of realize that when we need to do something great, something outside of the loop, something whatever, it's scary as all hell, obviously, but it's, we might, of course, we look foolish and we look not average, because exactly that, it's not average. But the most powerful thing in it is we unknowingly or knowingly, we allow others to do the same, and,
Absolutely.
the likes of all the great comedians, Robin Williams and all these people, like, so they were total and utter nut jobs and weirdos and the whole lot, in one sense, but in another sense, they offer this liberation, because even if you go to half of their quackery, well, maybe you'll find a bit of enjoyment in that. And for ourselves, and
Yeah.
again for anyone listening, like, advice would be, sure, look, who cares? We're a blip. We're, amongst a lot of gas and waves and rocks in this big massive universe in this tiny little glitch of time. Why the feck not go down with a bang?
Yeah, you might as well feel good while you're here.
Might as bloody well, like.
Yeah,
So I suppose, Connor, we'll start to finish up there for today. But it's that, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. A great conversation. But for going back to our 32, 32, 32, and the TFS, I
yeah,
suppose just quickly you might explain, in case people don't know already. Most people probably do, but what TFS stands for, or the acronym is itself. And as you mentioned, you're hoping to get the 32 in September, but maybe what you're going to be up to for these quarantine months, if there will be much of a quarantine on, and how people can both find you and find your separate links and so on, and maybe the donation page for your goal of 100,000 for Pieta.
yeah. So I suppose TFS had kind of two meanings. It had one meaning first, and then I changed it because it didn't really match with what I was kind of trying to put out there. When I started off doing my training for the 200 miles, I was like, I was, kind of having a bit of a joke one morning, and I was like, oh, I gotta, it's not about just going out and running. Like, it's about, it's about being about getting tough, like, just doing tough fucker shit, and I was kept on saying that. And then people started, like, messaging me and sending me videos and pictures of them doing exercise or runs and things like that, saying, oh yeah, TFS, tough fucker shit, and all that on it, and it just, it was great because it gave this kind of semblance of community, but it kind of it was kind of, it was, for me, it was just a bit of light-hearted messing, like, I didn't really think much of it at the time, and then as I kind of got more into it and into the kind of the reasons why I was doing this and why I wanted to help people, I was like, I wanted something that represented that. That's why it changed to that first step, and that's why the TFS 5 at 5 is it's a 5K run at 5 a.m. I do it every month, every one Saturday every month. I do the TFS 5 at 5. It's a 5 a.m. run, 5K out in the Lee Fields, and I think that TFS, it'll always be the TFS 5 at 5 because it doesn't matter if you've been out to 3 or 4 TFS 5 at 5s, but it's that one person that you know sees what I'm doing and sees what I'm trying to do and decides, what, I might meet this fucker out in out in the Lee Fields and do this 5K, and that might be the first step on their road to to being them, to getting back to where they want to be, and or getting some part of their own life back, and being who they are, not trying to be anybody else, not trying to look for the world's kind of answer. Whenever I get people out there and I gather people out there, I say to them, look guys, we want to be out here now. We're just going to run 5K and we're going to enjoy ourselves, but just take cognizance of what you're actually doing and who you're around, and why you're here. Why are you here? Why do you want to do these things? And really think about it. And if I can start people on that thought process that gets them onto that road, that's what it's all about. So that's what the TFS is, and that's what TFS 5 at 5 is. It's not nothing to do with running, really. Actually, to be honest with you, it's all about the community
Hmm.
and the unity side of it, and about people getting out of their comfort zone a bit. That's why it's at 5 o'clock in the morning, because I feel like you will be forged in the fire. If you step yourself out of that comfort zone and you get out there, there's fantastic beauty in it, and that kind of led me to the 32, the project 32, in that I wanted to touch as many people as I possibly could with that kind of a message. So I decided to do the 32 marathon, 32 days in the 32 counties, so that I could do it in all counties, and that I could get as many people involved as possible, and I could get I could get the message out to as many people as I possibly could. So decided that I would do that, and I decided that I would add the weight on 32 pounds and lose a pound a day after each marathon, as a symbolism of this negative feeling, this negative thoughts, and these bordering, sometimes suicidal thoughts that I had on my head, and how heavily they weighed upon my mind and my body when I had them. And now that I've thrown that weight off, I want to put that weight back on again and lose it with the whole country. And that's where the weight aspect comes into it. And if people want to donate or people want to follow along the journey, it's mostly done through my Instagram page, C O'Keeffe, Cokeeffe, and the link is in my bio to donate. And look, we've had tremendous support so far. I think we're at around €16,000 now. I had kind of envisioned that we might be at around €20,000 before the start line. Look, we're living in uncertain times right now, and it's kind of one of those things where I realize that I'm asking a lot of people to donate in this kind of bearish environment and atmosphere that we find ourselves in. Everyone's hanging on to everything that they have. And look, I'm not gonna fault anybody for doing that. That's survival for many people. So if people want to follow along the journey, you don't even have to donate. And I say that knowing that someone from Pieta might come across this. You don't even have to donate. I don't actually want your money, and I want the money for Pieta House, of course. But if anybody wants to follow along, you don't have to donate. If you don't have the money to donate, it's absolutely fine. People want to follow along the journey. I tell people an awful lot about my own life, about my own day to day. I crack a few jokes if I can. I show my training schedules. I'm very, it's very, very involved in with my own life. If you want to follow that along, and it gives you some positive ray in your life, or just adds to the positivity that's already there. That's just fantastic. So if anybody wants to get involved with anything like that, just follow me, C O'Keeffe, on Instagram, and we'll have a good time.
Awesome, yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, definitely, people think that they have to, when they have to donate or have to do whatever. Even the littlest things we give, whether it's a like on an Instagram post or something like that, it all makes a difference. And as you say, spreading a conversation, because if you're talking to some guy in the pub and you're saying, "Oh, this guy Conor O'Keeffe," well, you don't know who you're talking to. That person might donate something huge, or that person might send somebody to Conor or to Pieta or something that it might change their life. We really
Absolutely.
don't know how it can keep manifesting. It's just all that good energy.
Can't quantify people's generosity in terms of just their monetary contributions. I've had people show support to me, Jack, throughout this whole thing, and I couldn't actually even quantify it in money. Just from their support and from their positivity that they're giving me. I can't even quantify it. If people want to throw €2 in, we had everybody that was following me right now putting €2 in. We'd be 20 grand more into the €100,000 fundraiser. So if people wanted to throw the price of a cup of coffee, if as a blind boy says, if you buy me a cup of coffee, throw an old donation into Pieta House. And it's amazing, it's astounding what feeling of fulfillment you actually get from being part of something. And you are part of something. If you contribute €1 to it, you are part of it. You're part of a bigger thing, something that's way bigger than me, something that's way bigger than you. And it's a bigger message than any of us. And if people want to get involved and do it that way, they want to like something, share it on their story, do something like that gets the word out. As you said, you never know whose eyes or whose ears are on it, and it could allow this thing to get onto a further field.
Yeah, and to tie in, I suppose, with what we're talking. I mean, who are we not to be part of something? Even if we're in the midst of despair, or we're depressed, or we think we're an asshole or whatever. Who are we not to be part of something? Who are we? Why don't we deserve to be part of something like this? And for anyone out there who was thinking about that, and I said, look, just even message one of us, or send something, or share a post, or do bloody something, and be part of it. And I think once the person then can give, and they can become as part of that connect, that deeper energy and that deeper connection, as I say, like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all in this here together. Like, and even now, this podcast is recorded now. During the COVID-19, it's everybody's been coming together through that too. Everybody's been coming. I'm so proud to be an Irish man, and I don't want to take away from the rest of the world, but I've followed the Irish news. I live in Ireland. I'm proud to be an Irish man with the way that we have rallied together. We have unified, and people are acting for the greater good. There are some people that are late on the uptake, but I think everybody is gathering around for the greater cause, and everybody is getting together. It's that type of unity is, as I said, it's immeasurable in monetary terms. You can't measure that because it's something that comes from inside you, and it can't be bought and it can't be sold. So you can't quantify it. There is no money that you can put on it. You see people rallying around and helping each other. Like there was thousands upon thousands of applications for volunteers put out over the last couple of days since this whole thing has happened. I know that I'm one of them, and I'm waiting right now to hear of how I can help. And one thing that I will say as well is it's also reality that we may not be able to help, and we are able to passively help by not doing something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, that's something that would have been very tough for me to digest back in the day. Was if I'm not doing something, and if I'm not doing something to help, I'm part of the problem. That's not at all the case. If you can't find if they can't find a method of you helping out, the best thing you can do is to take responsibility and accountability for your own life and the way you live it, and to live it within the parameters of what you've been told is the right way to act. And man, the unity that people have showed, and the way that I've seen, I've seen parents out walking the dog with their children outside in the fresh air. I've seen people, doing home workouts that probably haven't ever been in even a gym in their lives. They're doing home workouts now because they have an opportunity to focus on themselves. And all of these things. These are the things that we should be plastering everywhere, all over social media. Is the positive side of it, and the positive side of humanity.
And in amidst all the negativity, which is the same going back, you get knocked out and you get your eye bust open. Well, then that's the time to grow, or you end up drunk in a ditch and smelling of fags and sick all over yourself. That's the time to grow, and
Absolutely, man.
now we're presented with, the way I prefer to look at it, is an opportunity, and
Absolutely.
whatever way we can make work of that, and not get focused in the results. Whatever happens, God knows. But once we can at least say, look, all I can do is all I can do, and I gave it all I could. Sure, what more can we want? Because people will still say yes to us, and people will still say no to us. That'll happen regardless. We'll still fuck up, and we'll still succeed. All those things happen regardless. But once we can, just say all we've done is all we could have done, and it's that whole idea, and I think it links in nicely with, as we were kind of saying through the whole pod. So I suppose we'll leave it there for today, Conor. We'll definitely try and get you back on, and we could chat way more into all of these fascinating subjects. So again, I suppose that's your social handle at Conor O'Keeffe. That I donate link. So it's idonate.ie/TFS 323232 for those of you who could give absolutely anything. But if not, head on to social media, give Conor a big follow. Like his post, share his stuff, even chat about it, share the word about this podcast, and so on. Have a chat with somebody, write your thoughts down, do all these things you can do. Seek the pleasure in the tough journey, not so much the comfort. Get out of your comfort zone. I think we kind of hit a lot of those nice points today. So, Conor, I wish you absolutely all the best. Thanks again so much for coming on, and keep up all that tough fucker shit.
Thanks very much, Jack. Absolute pleasure being on, my man.
So that's all for today with Conor. I hope, like me, you enjoyed his insights on what it takes to get over the many, many tough things in our life. If you'd like to follow his journey, again, you can catch him on Instagram. That's O'Keeffe, Keeffe. You can also find his iDonate link. That's idonate.ie/TFS 323232. If you like what we bring here on the show, head over to Instagram. You can find us at LifeFit Studios, or you can find my personal page at JackoHalloran_IE. We are also on Patreon, so if you'd like to support us there, you can find us at the LifeFit Podcast. So, with that in mind, be good to your fellow human and stay safe out there. All the best.